Hi there, we're from Little Lives, the leading school management system in the education industry. We're currently serving over 1,000 preschools across 10 countries, and we're here to make your day easier. When a child arrives in a school that uses Little Lives, the first step is to record the child's temperature using the Little Lives Smart Bluetooth Thermometer. The thermometer is FDA and CE approved to ensure the accuracy of a child's temperature reading. After performing a detailed visual health check, the child can then proceed to check in with our Little Check-in app, which records down the child's attendance, temperature reading, and visual health remarks. The child's parents will then receive a notification on the child's time in and out in their Little Family Room app. In the same Little Check-in app, schools are able to easily switch to our Little Visitor feature, which helps schools to record down incoming visitors. If your school chooses to accept visitors, Little Visitor helps to collect vital information like contact details, travel declaration for the countries visited in the last 14 days, and most importantly, the check-in and out time of the visitor. Schools can use our communications feature to send messages and learning resources to parents. Our broadcast feature also allows the school to send mass messages and customized responses so that parents can answer them accordingly on the Little Family Room app, allowing the school to collate important information. One of our schools has stopped all mass assembly times and mixed group activities. The children are divided into smaller groups to minimize contact between each other, and sanitization is done between sessions. This is where you can see the importance of homeschool partnership. This period showed everyone that learning goes beyond classrooms. Schools can use Little Lives to complement teaching moments with the child's parents whenever necessary. To ensure that children receive a holistic learning in this new norm, some schools have brought outdoor learning indoors. Teachers brought flowers and leaves into the classrooms for children to do stamping and pounding activities to improve their gross motor skills. This allows them to experience the various sensations that involves nature without actually going outdoors. They have also creatively found replacement equipment to stimulate the physical experience of an outdoor playground, so children can experience them within a safe environment. Some of our schools are also fortunate to have private outdoor areas within their center premises. They have adapted the duration of their outdoor lessons and only allow a certain number of children in each session. To comply with the health regulations, frequent sanitization of the playground is done before and after usage. Schools have used this new norm to teach children on ways to practice healthy habits and safety precautions creatively. Resources such as reading materials, infographics, and cue cards are also used to teach children on the current situation and how they can play a part in keeping their community safe and healthy. Children are resilient individuals, and it is time we celebrate that by reminding them to be health conscious and ever ready to take on new challenges. Little Lives is here to listen and to help you make your day easier so that you never have to worry about the complexity of running a school in this new norm. If you want to find out more about us, visit www.littlelives.com or contact us at feedback@littlelives.com. Till then, stay safe and take care. We cannot wait to hear more from you.
Hi everyone.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, Denise.
Hi Michelle.
Hi. Welcome, everyone, to another SGC webinar series brought to you by SEGI Group of Colleges. My name is Michelle, and together
And
with me
I'm Denise. Hi everyone.
hi, and we will be the moderator for today's session.
Mhm.
So, once again, welcome to this live webinar titled Safety and Psychosocial Wellbeing in the Early Childhood Care and Education Settings.
Thank you for joining us everyone. Now before we begin, we'd like to do a quick tech check with everyone. So if you can see and hear us clearly, please type yes in the comment section down below, or send us thumbs up or even any kind of emoji just to indicate to us everything's going well. Yep, we will wait for your indications.
So if you can hear us fine, if you can see us, give us a thumbs up or say yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Great.
So
Thank you.
for those of you who have just joined in, we welcome you once again to this live webinar titled Safety and Psychosocial Wellbeing in Early Childhood Care and Education Settings. My name is Michelle, and together with Denise, yes, we will be the moderators for today.
Now, a quick briefing for everyone before we start. Our session today will take approximately about an hour and a half. So during the session, we encourage you to type your questions, your comments in the section down below. And our speakers and ourselves, we will try our very best to answer as many questions as possible, all of your questions. And we also like to inform you that this webinar will be recorded and will be used by SEGI University and colleges and subsidiaries in the future. Now, is everyone ready? Michelle, are you ready?
Yes, I am. How about you?
I am. If our speakers are ready too, shall we begin?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So, our topic for today is again safety and psychosocial well-being in the early childhood care and education settings. And we are very honored to have three speakers with us today. Each of them are expert in their own professional field. Let me introduce our first speaker. This is Dato Dr. Amar Singh, but he has graciously insisted that we address him as Amar. Yes, Amar is a senior consultant pediatrician who served in the civil service for more than 35 years, and he was formerly the head of pediatric department at Ipoh Hospital and the head of clinical research center at Perak. So Amar joins us today all the way from Ipoh. So Amar, would you tell us something more about yourself, which is not already on the slide?
Hi, Michelle, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Michelle, I have three loves in my life. I love God, I love my wife, madly, and I love nature, especially birds. And if you need to describe me, describe me by those three loves.
Wow. That's wonderful. Thank you, Amar. Okay, so let's look at our next speaker.
Right. Thanks, Michelle. Now, for our next speaker, we have Ms. Katiana Azman. So, Yana. Yana.
Hello.
I thought I lost you there for a while. Hi, Yana. So, Yana's presently a child psychologist at Pantai Hospital. In two sentences, Yana, tell us something that we don't already know about you.
Oh gosh, I wish I had something insightful as Dr. Amma, but unfortunately, I am an extreme workaholic. And so my loves, or at least the things that I commit myself to, is on top of being a child psychologist, a big part of my role is psychoeducation, because I think, as anyone knows, psychology is still very much in its infancy here in Malaysia. So a lot of what I do is also outside the clinic, where I'm going out talking about mental health. And so if you've heard me or seen me somewhere, that's me doing my thing. And yeah, it's pretty much it.
Thanks, Yana. Oh, I forgot to mention that, Yana is actually on her vacation, and she was so kind to promise us at the instant that I got in touch with her, and she agreed to join us on this webinar tonight. So she's actually on her vacation right now working. So that kind of suits what she just told us, right?
Little bit workaholic, yes.
But thanks, Diana. Thanks for coming on with us here tonight.
No problem.
All right, let's take a look at our next speaker.
Okay, great. So next we have Miss Bae Sue-Ann. Sue-Ann, hi Sue-Ann.
Hi everybody. A privilege to be here this evening.
Yes. So Sue-Ann has 18 years of experience in the education industry. She is the founder and managing director of TSC Education, Little Professor Chinese Program, and a few other education brands in Malaysia. So Sue-Ann, tell us more about you.
All right. I think if there are some things that you may not know, it would be that I've got two children, one 8 and another 10. One of my favorite pastime is to cook. So cooking is one of my main hobbies. That's to de-stress. Maybe one more thing that many may not know would be that I have a first degree in computing, and during this MCO, when it comes to tech knowledge, it came in really handy. That's about it.
Wow,
That's wonderful to hear.
Yes. Great. All right. Yeah. So we are ready to start.
We are.
Okay. Now, I would like to call upon Sue-Ann as our first speaker. Yes, Sue-Ann.
Yeah,
Yes.
right here.
Yes, Sue-Ann. We are so glad to find out that up to date, you have about 80% of your children returning to your centers after the ministry has allowed the reopening of taska and tadika.
Yes.
Yeah, and we also know that you and your staff have been working very, very hard to put in all the practices of the SOP to ensure the physical safety of all in the early childhood setting, in your settings. So, but what about the psychosocial well-being of children and the staff? That's also something that we would like to discuss tonight. So first of all, my first question to you, Sue-Ann, after dealing with all this reopening of your centers, can you share with us what is your biggest frustrations since you reopened your centers?
All right. Thank you for introducing me and also asking this question, because it provides us a space to kind of like voice our frustration as practitioners. So if I'm to summarize that, about 3 categories of frustrations that we face as we reopen. So firstly, it was the SOP that came in a little bit late, and there were a lot of ambiguities and there's a lot of confusion. For example, when it came to face masks, it was recommended, but what was not compulsory at first. And then we had some SOP that say you can bring a school bag into school, and some of the things were not very practical in a real setting. So there was a lot of confusion at first, and with no prior knowledge and no experience, we had to read up a lot, and we had to clarify with different people, especially healthcare professionals. But different advices came in conflicting, and we had to make our own decisions and do a lot of careful planning and then adjust along the way. There was also a bit of cost and time constraint. There was so much to do, so little time, and a lot of things were very expensive. For example, when we first started in May, face masks were actually at about 75 or 80 ringgit per box. And up to date, we have spent more than 10,000 just on face masks alone. So this was some of the great frustrations in terms of really a huge workload and an increased cost to that. So that would be the first frustration. Then going into the second frustration, second category of frustration, I would think that a lot of time, it's a huge amount of time is spent in constant explanations, reminders, and monitoring, because largely people were prioritizing comfort and convenience over safety. So it was a mindset. In fact, in the beginning, we had people who would open their mask just to speak, or open their mask to sneeze and wear it up again. And these were things that, to me, they were common sense. But for some people who actually think comfort was more important, they would complain about things like this. We also had other examples of parents who will not bring face masks for their children or themselves. And we had to remind over and over again. I won't even use the word remind, because I was nagging them. over and over again. It was pretty tiring in terms of just working with these people who actually prioritize comfort over safety, and that was one of the greatest frustration as well. And thirdly, if you look at the third slide, these were photos taken just right before MCO. And one of the biggest frustrations that practitioners would face, even as we stop COVID from spreading, we also stop hugs and kisses in the school. If you look at Bernie and the child hugging, those were affections that children received in school that made them happy, but that had to stop. And teachers were also refrained from holding children's hand and helping them with things that they needed assistance with. Children were also not allowed to congregate, and a lot of the hands-on activities were stopped. So these were some of the frustrations that were faced. So basically, if you look at the next slide, you will find that many of the social distancing rules, inclusive of the wearing of face masks, have actually put a big impact on children's learning as well as their psychosocial development. If you look at the face mask, it actually shielded the teacher's expression. But this teacher is trying her best. Even her eyes can speak now. If you see the teacher holding the cupcake, look at her eyes. She's trying to use gestures and body language to speak to her children. And they have to find many other creative ways to help children to learn. To us as practitioners, it is not easy. Some of the other experiences we had was that our school was supposed to be a place that children learn how to share and children make friends. But during this time, we hear ourselves saying things like, please do not hold your friends' hands. Please do not share. I hear myself saying this to children, please do not share. And this is a frustration that we are facing right now. And we are still finding really creative ways to go around this. So that summarizes my 3 greatest frustration in a short 3 minutes. I hope that it helps.
Thank you, Sue-Ann. Yes, I can totally feel you. And I'm sure if among school operators or teachers who are listening right now, if you can share your frustration, yeah, like what Sue-Ann just did, yeah, maybe your frustration is similar like what Sue-Ann has experienced. Yeah, please type in the chat box. What are your greatest frustration? Yeah, when you
I trust many practitioners can identify with me even as I share my frustrations.
Yes. Yep. Okay, great. Now, Sue-Ann, my second question to you. With all this frustration, how are you and your teachers coping emotionally? Now we are talking about the mental health, yeah, emotionally, amidst your effort to keep everyone safe at your center. Sue-Ann, can you share with us?
I would say it has been a really long journey from the start of MCO, and it's been very challenging. I'm going to just show you a word cloud over here, and this is precisely what we are feeling right now. It's very complicated. I think if you ask most teachers, we will tell you that we are pretty tired. The exhaustion is beyond measure, and we're asking, when is this going to end? It's a real frustration. We are tired. I've got teachers reporting to me that they cannot sleep at night. I had my own experience of in April, especially when the MCO first set in. I had to deal with parents, and I have to still continue the leadership among the team. And I had nights that I curled up in bed to cry because it was just so stressful. I was scared. I was anxious. I was frustrated. I even feel like quitting, but I keep telling myself I just have to go on. So then we put on that strong front and say we can go on. We tell ourselves, hang in there, let's persevere a little bit more. We can do this. We can do this together. But these are real feelings that are really inside us, especially for center managers. I believe as I share this, many center managers can identify with me. We are faced with, especially center owners as well, we were faced with the financial stress as well. And then you still have to put on that strong front to lead your team and pretend that you know all when you really do not know. Pretend that you are calm when you really are struggling inside yourself. And also facing parents and students. It was a daunting time. We are recovering even as centers reopen, and we hope for a better tomorrow. At this point of time, I just want to salute every teacher and every center manager that is here today. I believe we are going to see better days even as we persevere. And your problem is not unique, and we are here together. So that's a short sharing about how I feel on a very honest note.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Would you use the word burnout?
I would say there's definitely some point that we have hit that burnt out line, because it's exhaustion beyond measure. Things that we used to love we love to do, we tend to feel it's we just don't want to look at work anymore. There's loss of interest. We are just exhausted beyond measure, and that's how I would describe it.
Yes, and we can see that Scott Wong is actually resonating what you were saying, and it's exactly like how you describe. Yes, Sue Ann. So you are not alone, Sue Ann. And for the listener out there, you are not alone either. Yes.
Yeah. But I still want to salute teachers, because no matter how bad they feel, they always go on. Yeah, they always go on and they persevere through. So I salute your teachers.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you, Sue Ann. Yeah. So we hear Sue Ann shared how the practitioners are exhausted, tired, and burnt out. So, but we would like to hear from the child psychologist point of view. Can we bring in Yana? Yana, yes, my first question to you. We talk about burnout.
I really feel the overwhelming urge to reach across the screen and hug Sue Ann after hearing that.
Yes. Now, Yana, she talked about burnout.
Yes.
Would you tell us clearly what are the symptoms of burnout, and tell us some tips for the practitioner on how they can manage their own burnout?
Absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. But burnout is definitely an issue that is well documented and is basically associated with stress within the workplace environment. So just to kind of explain, the definition of burnout is, it's a condition that results from chronic stress within an occupational setting or within a professional framework that has not been successfully managed. There is a common misconception, I think a lot of adults that I've spoken to will say so, that if they don't feel some level of stress within the work environment, they've missed out on something or something is wrong. And generally, that's why we've kind of embraced stress or work-related stress just part of being an adult. But the symptoms of burnout, or an indication that you're approaching burnout, is if you're feeling sort of feelings of lethargy and exhaustion. No matter how many hours of sleep you're getting, you're exhausted. There's an increased mental distance, or like what Sue Ann was mentioning, just kind of not wanting to get up and go to work, not really feeling like giving up, sort of this distance that seems to have been created between yourself and your occupation or your job. Feelings of negativity, feeling that you can't really do it, you're kind of not capable of the role. So just a lot of this negativity, which used to be something that you would have enjoyed, like Sue Ann was mentioning. There's also the sense of reduced professional efficacy, which means you're not really feeling that you can fulfill the role anymore. You're starting to doubt your capabilities and whether or not you can complete the task. These are some of the major symptoms or the major milestones of what we call burnout. It's something that is so prevalent and so relevant that it's been inducted into the ICD-11, which is one of the guidebooks that we in the mental health field used to diagnose conditions, and it's considered an occupational phenomenon, something that occurs within the work setting. But with the current norm, or with the new norm that's been initiated by COVID-19, what happens with in a scenario where the boundary between work and home has kind of been eliminated. Everyone was working from home from a particular period of time, though a lot of schools have now reopened. So what happens when you kind of have that whole work-home separation removed? The brain no longer benefits from what we call environmental separation, which means the concept of a safe space where you can de-stress, relax, kind of like chill from your day is completely eradicated because you're now in the same space that you were working in. Professional and personal stress now occupy the same space, which means that, some people who are teaching classes at their living room desk will now have to worry about their kids fussing around around at their living room table or the dining table. There is no longer a separation between the two environments. And then on top of that, personal and professional responsibilities co-occur at the same time. You have to be a mom and a teacher at the same time, or a dad and a teacher at the same time. And those demands are expected of you within the same time frame, which makes it even more stressful. So what do we do, right? Essentially why we're here. So I came up with with a little bit of a simple way to remember the 4 key things that you're supposed to kind of keep in mind. And I call it the 4 Ps, which is prepare, plot, and I can't forget the other 2 because my brain just went blank, but it's prepare, plot, praise, and something else, which I will get to, but bear with me. So prepare, that is the first area that we talk about. And the reason why we need to prepare is because it helps us manage situations of increased anxiety or uncertainty. Because if we know what is coming ahead, our chances of panicking and our chances of having to think on your feet is limited. So how do we prepare? The first thing you want to do is identify the obstacles. What is overwhelming you and why? Everybody responds to stress differently because we come from different backgrounds, we have different life experiences, and therefore to expect that everybody's responding to this pandemic in the same way is unrealistic. So the first thing that you got to do is identify what is the overwhelming factor and why. The next thing you have to do is identify the direction. Can you do something about this overwhelming component? If the answer is yes, find a solution. Ask yourself questions like this, which says, how can I go about addressing this concern? What are the steps that I can take to be better prepared if in the event that these concerns occur? But in the situation where you can't do anything about it, identify the compromise. How can I make the best of this situation? What is within my control and how do I maximize my involvement in that area? What I can control, for example, is how I portray myself to my students. What I cannot control is the regulations or the rules that are coming in from the ministry. So identifying what you can control and what you can manipulate and putting that within the context of what you can't is a good way to stay on top of all the uncertainty that's occurring around us. The next P is plot. Plan a routine or plan a schedule. It's an important part of managing anxiety and burnout. It provides a detailed schedule of what needs to be done by when, allows you to exercise control. Part of the reason why the MCO and the pandemic in general was so distressing to people, and practitioners such as myself within the mental health sphere were working overtime, was because you took away the one thing from the human race that we need to live with, or specifically that we can't live without: control. Not being able to inform where we go, when, with who, what time. Those types of things are integral to our mental health. And so this lockdown, this pandemic was something that really took us, really blindsided us. So we need to be able to maintain control and autonomy in the areas where we can. And a routine will give us that illusion. Control how your day will go, limiting the opportunity for panic and anxiety, and because everything will be predictable. It's basically like coming up with a timetable in school. Do the same thing with your day. If you have a family, this routine will give you insight into which parts of your day to allocate on personal tasks, because you will then know when your kids are going to be down for their nap and give you an idea of when you should be answering those emails or taking a break yourself. It helps you plan your day when you also know where everyone is going to be. It also makes your schedule more it's also important to make your schedule reasonable. No point saying that you're going to be working for 15 hours when you know realistically you're not going to be working for 15 hours. Make sure that the routine is something that you are going to follow. Which brings us to the next P, which I completely forgot earlier, which is pause. Breaks are essential and a very, very integral component of mitigating burnout. You need to carve out at least 15 minutes a day, but ideally as often as you can manage, to do something the opposite of stressful, which is relaxing. Find a funny video on YouTube. Look up half an episode on Netflix if you can, or knit or read or get a cup of coffee. Do something that elicits a happier, calmer response, even if you have 15 minutes to spare. And again, this is where the routine kind of comes in handy, because you then know when everyone is busy. Breaks should also include things that are accessible and affordable. Doesn't have to be anything expensive or luxurious. And work breaks into your daily schedule just as much as you would work lunchtime or toilet breaks. They should be a break, not a chore. And finally, praise. You need to take a moment to remind yourself of all the things that you've managed to get done. It's not about completing tasks. It's also about the effort that you put in. You need to be able to be acknowledge it and to praise yourself for the fact that you've managed to get things done, and not just focus on all the things that you have not yet accomplished. Shift your focus from the overwhelming negative to the increasing positive, glass half full kind of situation. And make sure that you incentivize yourself. Now, everybody here who has some type of experience working with young children, I'm sure you guys have something similar to a token system or a reward chart or a star chart in your classrooms. We as adults need it as well, though our ability to wait for those rewards and consequences are a lot better. But at the end of the day, we still need to have something to look forward to. So make sure you reward yourself with a special treat at a particularly scheduled time of the week, just to keep you motivated, but also give you something to look forward to. But what happens if burnout goes unaddressed? What happens if we just accept it? For the individual, and given the context of which we're speaking in today, where everybody works within the childcare sphere, the risks relating to the development of more pervasive psychiatric conditions is on the horizon, such as depression and anxiety, which can increase significantly, the risk of which increases significantly if burnout is not addressed. And for the children under your care, the challenges that you're experiencing will be something that they will then take on as a guide of how they themselves should conduct themselves. So if we are showing that we are unsettled, the children in our care will be unsettled as well. And for that reason, we thought it was really important to reach out to people to understand just how important this burnout situation really is. So, yeah.
Thank you, Yana.
Very
That
welcome.
was very insightful. So for the listeners out there, now it's time for you to check. Are you burnt out? Looking at Yana's symptoms that she has mentioned. So just be aware. Yes, if you do feel that you have certain checks on Yana's checklist, so you can still do something about it. The 4 Ps, right? You talk about prepare. Yeah, find what you can do to control it. You have to plot, to have a routine. You have to pause, take breaks in between, and also praise yourself. Pat yourself. Yes. So thank
you don't do that enough. You're very welcome.
Yes. What if what if burnout is gone? Has gone unaddressed?
If burnout is not something that is addressed effectively, then as the last slide mentioned, the risk of the individual who is going through burnout increases in terms of their chances of it developing into something like clinical anxiety or clinical depression. I do work with, in addition to my capacity at Pantai, I also do work with a lot of corporations. And one of the major concerns are individuals who are experiencing issues such as burnout, and then feeling that it's just kind of an everyday normal adult problem, and then developing into an anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder. So there is that genuine risk, and that's why we've been going out trying to encourage people to understand that burnout does definitely has some type of negative side effect.
Okay, great. Yes, and so much has been spoken about the adults. Now let's consider the children, Yana. So what is your view on this changed world will have on the children? What do you think? Will this change have an impact on the children? And
Absolutely.
then what will be the tips for the parents and also the practitioner to help the children?
Absolutely. I think the changes that we are experiencing is something that do affect the children significantly, and there are a few major reasons as to why that is happening. So primarily what we are looking at is the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of changes that have been happening due to COVID-19. It's brought about, as I mentioned, drastic altercations in the structure of our daily lives. And as adults, we're very good at rationalizing or at least trying to understand why it is that we have to make these changes. But children struggle with understanding that. And I feel in my role as a psychologist, oftentimes I feel that adults forget that children are still doing a lot of growing. And even though something makes sense to us as adults, it's not something that they can process or comprehend depending on how old they are. And so there are basically multiple reasons, or 2 major reasons reasons as to why children are struggling to understand what's going on. The first is limited life experience. They do not have decades and decades worth of life experience telling them that if this, will likely survive this, life will probably go back to normal. If they've only been around for 4 or 5 years, this is the first time something this drastic has ever happened. And so their brain's ability to rationalize that everything is going to be okay if we follow the protocols is not something they can do naturally. The second thing is also the immaturity of the PFC, or specifically what we call the prefrontal cortex. So allow me a couple of minutes to bore everyone with some technical jargon, but I hope this will give everyone some insight. The prefrontal cortex is a region of the brain on the very front of your head, so behind your forehead. And it's basically responsible for what makes us functional, rational adults. It does things like navigate complex cognitive behavior. It enables us to reason and make decisions and organize ourselves. It also helps us with regulating our emotions, knowing that when we're upset, not to have a meltdown or a temper tantrum. Everything that makes us calm, logical adults is housed within one region of the brain. It orchestrates thoughts and actions into goals, so planning skills. It supports concrete rule learning, and it makes up 1/3 of the entire human brain. Now, here's the part that it gets really interesting. 90% of the child's brain development happens before the age of 5. So all of the regions that are in blue over there are fully developed by the time the child is 5 years old. But the remaining 10, which if you notice on the diagram is the entirety of the PFC, will continue to grow until the child is no longer a child, until we are 30 years old. So the PFC reaches full maturity at about 27, 28, 29. There's no exact number in the literature. So, and kids learn from the use of the prefrontal cortex from watching adults. The more life experience, the more exposure they're getting, the more developed the PFC becomes. But mind you, if a child is only 4 or 5 years old and full maturity is reached at 28 to 30, imagine just how much programming is still not yet fully developed. And so a lot of those skills that we talked about that enables us to be calm, rational adults that can think in the future, think about consequences, think of controlling your emotions, understanding why we need to do things. Those are all things that are still very, very, very immature, especially in children who are in early childhood education. And so that is something that I often like to tell people. So if anyone has heard any of my talks before, you'll know I talk about the PFC a lot. And the reason why is because I feel it helps us as adults understand the experience of children and how we can customize our approach to a language that they can basically comprehend based on the level of their development. So how will these changes affect children? The changes that we're seeing also introduce an increased level of anxiety. Children are likely to respond with increased anxiety and hesitation or fear due to the changes implemented at school. Younger children will find all of the precautionary measures, the face masks, the shields, the barriers, frightening because the only time they've ever been exposed to these things in the past have been in a hospital setting. They didn't live through multiple haze seasons or other pandemics like we have, and therefore it's not something that they are accustomed to, especially here in Malaysia, and even more so in other parts of the world. Parents and teachers who reinforce these changes with fear tactics, which is something that I've seen a lot of adults do. If you don't do this, you're going to get sick. If you share your toy, you're going to make your friends sick. To encourage compliance, will likely have to deal with negative behaviors such as not wanting to go to school, school refusal, or being obsessively afraid of everything like germs and going out and crowds and friends. And those are the types of things that we're going to have to deal with down the line. The next thing is, like Sue-Ann touched on, affected social development. The precautions hinge on kids staying as far apart as possible to limit the amount of interaction they're having. This will affect how they function amongst same age peers because mutual play is an integral part of how kids develop at that age. Depending on how old your children are, some of them do not have developed language skills just yet. And because of that, play and interaction is so important, and taking that away does have a consequence. Children may also grow to become quite afraid of engaging with people because they're quite accustomed to being by themselves. And so especially when you have groups of adults who are practicing this fear mongering, even more so, kids are going to be more averse to hanging out with other kids. And then we'll also have the issue with problematic behaviors. Going back again to the PFC and how we mentioned it struggles with helping individuals regulate their emotions, younger children are not neurologically equipped It's a hardware problem, I often say, not a software one, to handle complex human emotions. And this often results in problematic behaviors coming up as a coping mechanism. So you will tend to see things like temper tantrums and emotional outbursts become more prevalent, especially in situations where the adults the adults with which they're in their care, such as caregivers, parents, teachers, who are not handling it well themselves, like we talked about with burnout earlier. It provides the children with an understanding that is the language, or that is the method with which I can communicate my frustrations, because those people are doing it. So these are type of the things that we kind of see. So how can we as the adults in their lives support them? The first thing that I've been encouraging is to normalize the changes. Take the intimidation and the fear out of the changes that we're seeing. We as adults might be struggling with the uncertainty, but they kind of don't need to know that at this point. Take all of the intimidation and the fear out of all of these changes that we are implementing. Use social stories, which is a very powerful tool that we're using with children who do not have complex language skills, or children who are quite young, to educate them on concepts that are a little bit confusing. And there are a lot of websites that you can use to help you develop social stories for yourselves, to understand, to help them understand why these changes have taken place, but in a context that's age appropriate. One of the things that I like to do, one of the social stories that I came up with for a bunch of my clients, is that there's this bad guy running around named COVID who makes everybody sick by sneezing on them. So the superhero came up with a suit of armor, which includes a mask and a shield. So you kind of get my drift. We're turning it into a very child-friendly version of the truth that they can process a lot better. Customize the protective equipment so that it's a lot less intimidating. I've seen some schools, and I've seen in some of Suwin's pictures where she's gone ahead and used cartoon stickers as compared to the government issue kind of stuff to make it more playful and funny. And one of the things I also like is to make it a craft session. Get your kids involved in decorating their own masks at the start of the day, or their own face shields, or their own acrylic barriers, just to kind of make things a lot less scary. Secondly, it's really important to lead by example. Children are more likely to take to these changes calmly if the adults around them are practicing the same level of calmness. The example I often use with parents is that your kids are the passengers on your flight, and you are the pilots. And if the pilots run out of the cockpit kicking and screaming, us as passengers, without even knowing the context, will start freaking out as well. So they really, really look to you with regards to how to respond. If you do not know the answer to something, which is common given the uncertainty of everything, offer to help them find out and make a project out of it. Make it something that's fun. Don't be afraid to be honest about the fact that there's a lot that we don't know, and it will be good practice to have the children unafraid of uncertainty. If I don't know, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to find the answer. I'm going to come up with ways to kind of be okay with it. So if you don't react in a similar panicky fashion, the kids will read it as well. Communicate and exercise patience. Now, I know that for every teacher and for every parent who's been having to kind of wing their way through this pandemic, I know that patience is a word you hear a lot, and you probably want to reach across the screen and strangle me for the fact that I'm saying it. But it is completely understandable for caregivers to be overwhelmed and frustrated given the situation, but do your best to exercise patience and communicate with your child when they're having a difficult moment, because remember, the PFC puts them on a very different playing field to the rest of us. Try to get to the root cause of their outbursts, find out when they've calmed down, what was it that set them off, instead of getting upset and kind of making them feel bad about their outburst. They probably don't have the language, again, to explain the particular word. They probably don't have the word for it. So kind of help them describe it. Say things like, I noticed just now when you couldn't share with your friend, you got quite angry. Give them the language and give them the words if it's not something that they can do. Don't be afraid to point out that we as adults have that moment as well. It's a very powerful tool that I use in my clinic when I'm working with young people who have trust issues, which is quite common. I often say, I had a really bad day the other day. You want to know what happened? Explaining that you too are having difficulty makes them feel a little bit less self-conscious about themselves. And that's pretty much my 2 cents on it.
Thank you so much, Yana. Thank you so much. I get so much out of it just by listening to you. And I think that it's very insightful into the child's mind, when you talk about what they what they understand and how they see the whole thing. And it also helped us to make sense of explaining how children behave the way they do, right? Respond to the situation. And to understand what kind of appropriate expectation we should have as the adults. Yeah, judging from where they come from. And I particularly like your social story, Yana. So it must be age appropriate, right?
Yes, it has to be age appropriate. I wouldn't use the superhero story if you have a teenager on your hands, because they'll probably think that you're making fun of them. But if you have a young child, definitely, and like I said, there's a lot of websites and resources that will help people come up with social stories. They are designed to help kids with complex concepts like death and pandemic being one of them. So it's something that you can look up. But I love social stories because it bridges the language divide. You can come up with booklets and have images, and it's really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I guess preschool teachers, when you are looking into how to explain about COVID-19 to your children, that's one of the ways, right? Yeah. Okay. Now,
absolutely. I think it was really great. All the tips that you shared, I think they're very practical. And I also think that many of us here can relate, especially the 4 Ps that you covered. I think even apart from ECCE practitioners, other people can also relate to that and put that to use. So I think that's really great. We can see Scott sharing with us here, very insightful and helpful for early childhood teachers. Katiana, thanks for sharing. Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks,
Yana.
Thank you. Now that we've covered quite a fair bit on mental well-being, let's try to move on to the physical aspects of things, shall we? Now, if you were here earlier and if you watched the video that we shared and shown earlier before we started our webinar, you noticed that Sue-Ann, we had this video where Sue-Ann and her team, like many of you, I believe, have implemented new protocols, new practices in your schools, in your settings. And Sue-Ann, can I, Sue-Ann? Right.
Hi again.
Yeah, so based on that video, right, I could see that you and your team have implemented new protocols, new practices in your school. Share with us, how did you come about making those decisions in putting these key safety features in your centers? Like what's the rationale behind those practices that you put in place?
All right, sure things. I would not be able to cover everything, but I would just pick up some key points. Basically, there was a lot of reading and there was a lot of careful planning, looking into the practical part and also looking at the monies that were involved and then seeking clarifications from professionals. So today, I'm also learning a lot from Katiana as well as Dr. Amar today. I'm really blessed to be learning. So one of the first contemplations that we had was, do we use just the face mask? Do we use just the face shield, or do we use both together? Is it comfortable? How safe is safe? Our school, we have decided to just use the face mask for children. There are many things that we have contemplated. I've spoken to different healthcare professionals, but I'm going to just leave this topic because Dr. Amma will be covering this in much more detail in terms of why a face mask is necessary. And if you would like to choose a face shield, you would not use the face shield by itself, but you will be using it together. So Dr. Amma will cover a little bit more about this, but for my school, for our children, we would just use the face mask on a general note, except for children that are younger than 2 years old or 3 years old, if they're not effectively wearing the face mask, we may advise a face shield. I do know a lot of centers that are doing both face mask and face shield. We have tried using that with our children, but we have found that on a general note, it can become very uncomfortable over the long run, but we also wanted to make sure that it's safe. So we went on to look for different resources as well as check with different healthcare professionals, and we came to this decision of just face mask. But for my center, we only advise 3-ply face mask, and we do not allow cloth mask at this moment of time. And the reason for that would be that 3-ply face mask, disposable masks are regulated, and there are 3 layers to it. But when it comes to cloth mask, there are just too many manufacturers not much of a standardization to it. And we're a bit worried at this moment when COVID is still very much active. But towards September, we may make a relaxation when it comes to cloth mask, but I believe we need to put guidelines to it so that we make sure that everybody is safe. I'm going to go on to my next slide, bring out another thing that we did in our center. So we also installed acrylic table dividers. So initially, when we first started our taska, as well as Pusat Jagaan in May, when we first started, we had tapes whereby we would just tape the tables and get children to stay in their own boundaries. But it wasn't so easy because children would still move around, especially for the younger children. So after much contemplation and research, we've decided to spend a bit of money. We did this much earlier on, so it was much more expensive as compared to now. I believe you could get this on a more economical scale right now. This has really helped to reinforce the boundary whereby children could just stay in their safe place, but it has to be transparent. I've seen some school doing it by using a bit of an opaque material. I would highly go for transparent materials because then they can still see their friend on the other side. In fact, they can touch their friend, but having the particular acrylic divider right between their hands, and they are safe, but they could still interact. It's also like a personalized space. Some of our teachers have begun to put cloth packs on the divider, and children could hang their face masks on it, or they have their food, or they could actually put up their art and craft and things and just decorate their own personalized space. So it has been very helpful. So I'm going to go on to the next thing that we have done in our center as well. So we had a bit of predicament when it came to arrival and pickup. When we first started, parents were advised to send their children to the entrance. So what they did was that they parked their car, they would come down from the car, open the car door, get their child, come to our entrance. But soon after, we realized with more children returning physically, that was not feasible. We had traffic pile up, and it was causing a traffic congestion right in front of our doorsteps. So we had to then change. So we needed to get teachers to come down to open the car doors. The question is it safe to open car doors? How do we protect children as well as families, as well as would it be safe? So we actually look at gloves. At the same time, when I was speaking to different practitioners, different healthcare professionals, they were saying that the usage of gloves may create a false sense of security. So gloves is not for long term. So what we have decided to do was to wear gloves on one hand only. So teachers would have two hands to help them distinguish which hand is used to open the car door and which hand to hold the child. We had an indicator where one hand would have gloves, and that would give teachers also the security that they are protected, and they would open car doors. But because they're opening multiple car doors and we need to minimize contagion, we also get teachers to sanitize the gloves or the car door before they touch it again. So is it safe or not? This is the way we do it in our setting. There were a lot of details. Actually, along the way, even as we implement, we realized that there are many adjustments to make it safer as well as more practical in our setting. There was another contemplation that we had. Do we take temperatures in the car, or do we take temperatures when they arrive at our entrance? So I know other schools that actually take the temperature of the child in the car, but that for us would mean that it will be a long traffic pile up. And another thing would be that the teacher will then have to pop herself into the family's car, and that may also pose a risk to the teacher herself. So we decided that parents would take temperature at home, and they would fill in a form digitally in an app, and we will be notified in the sense on the child's temperature. And when they come to this setting, when they come to the center, we'll take the temperature again at the entrance. And we also use an app to notify parents on the temperature. So I think digitalization and having technology in the center is pretty important as well. I'm going to go through the next slide. One of the other struggles that we had was with footwear. So initially we had dedicated footwear lunch boxes for each and every child. We had the stainless steel lunch box for every child. But then we realized that when it came to dealing with dirty dishes, there was quite a risk of contagion because everything was washed together, dried together, and we only had one helper, and that one helper dealt with everybody's dirty dishes. And we find that that can actually be a risk. So finally, we decided with more children coming back to the center, we got into using disposables. But disposables can be pretty expensive. So you need to look at how to kind of put that on a scale. When you use disposables, do use paper ones instead of plastic ones, because when you're serving warm food, you want to make sure that it's not toxic as well for children. We have decided to go on initially we started using some disposable utensils, but later on we actually went back to our melamine fork and spoons, and what we did was just after usage, we would just clean it up with hypochlorous acid and then wash it again. It's more manageable just to use to take care of the cutleries and then just dispose the bowls separately. So it's much safer. So we need to find our way around dirty dishes. For some smaller settings, they may use a sterilizer, but for us, with more children returning, it was a little bit of a predicament. Yeah, we had a bit of thing about when it comes to water bottles. I've been very particular about water bottles, telling parents to bring their own water from home and avoid refilling in the center. We do have a dispenser in the center, but we realized that every time they refill, when they open the bottle cap, the mouth of the bottle would come into direct contact with the dispenser, and that's a cause for contagion. Unless the teacher would take every water bottle, clean it up and wash it carefully before they refill, the best way is still to get parents to bring their own water. Some parents kicked up a fuss with that, but we still have to say that it has to be safer for children. I'm going to go on to my next slide. So one of the other things we did on top of just daily surface disinfection is to actually invest in a cold fogging air disinfection machine, and we do that twice a day when the children have departed from the center, and before they come into the center, we actually would cold fog the whole center over again. We had to look at a safe and economical ingredients when it comes to disinfection. I had to do a bit of a study to this. When it comes to using disinfectant, I find that a lot of centers are not looking at what is the active ingredient. They'll be looking at a particular brand, but not knowing what is really inside. So I made a bit of a research, and for us, we use hypochlorous acid, which is generally quite affordable and safe at the same time. The purchase of a cold fogger was a little bit expensive, and what we did was we actually discussed with parents about a shared cost. So we talk about 70 cents to about 1 ringgit per day that the parents would top up in terms of a surcharge on top of their regular fees. It can be about 15 ringgit per month up to 20 ringgit per month. Every parent would chip in so that we could cover disposable ware as well as disinfection. The idea is everyone to contribute that little bit to make all of us safer in this environment. But this part took a lot of energy. It took a lot of energy because I had to speak to parents one by one just to explain that extra 15 ringgit per month, where did it go and how can it make us safer? So that's what we did. And I'm going to just go through my final slide. I think in making all this SOP and keeping us safe in terms of making a COVID-free learning environment, we had to find creative ways. When we first started in May, we realized that we were actually imprisoning our children. We tell them things like, stay right there, don't go anywhere. We were giving them instructions and telling them things like, stay at the line, stand at the line, stand in the box. And it was very controlling. So we got into June and we realized that this is not going to work because it has to be fun. We have to bring that fun and creative learning back into our center. So we removed our lines and we removed our boxes and changed them into cuter ones. I had a good friend that helped us design this and another friend that helped us print it in bulk. And so you have got that penguin there. So we could play games together with the kids and say, can you stand with the penguin? Can you please stand with the penguin? Could you stand with the elephant? Which animal would you like to stand with today? And it was pretty interesting. The kids like it. I also like the part where teachers would have rhymes and songs to help them wash their hands and help them remember the routines. We also did a lot of art and craft where we did face shields and all these creative ways to help them follow the SOP. So that's about all when it comes to my short sharing about some of the safety things that we have done in our center to keep everybody
That's
safe.
beautiful. Thanks a lot, Suen. Thanks for sharing so much with us. I'm pretty sure many of us out there, ECCE practitioners especially, probably are practicing similar practices, protocols in your centers, in your settings. If you are, please do share with us in the comment section down below. We'd like to hear from you to see if you're doing anything similar to Suen, or what do you think about the practices that Suen is implementing in her school. Now, Amar, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Amar. Now, we've heard a lot from Suen on, the physical practices that she's put in place in her school. But she also mentioned that she had so many predicaments when it came to deciding what to do, what not to do. Should she use gloves? Should they not use gloves? Should she and her team do a double mask and shield wear and things like that? There were so many predicaments. Could you share with us some of your professional advice, opinions on the safety measures, or even some of the features that Suen has implemented in her center? And then at the same time, we also love to hear from you some recommendations that you have for us to ensure physical safety on for all the ECCE setting here. Over to you, Amar.
Thanks, Denise. And I'm going to share screen so we can see some of these ideas. Okay, fine. Right. Can you see the screen? Denise, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to share some very quickly, very briefly, a summary of the COVID-19 reality. We need to remember some of these realities, then the key issues for children and teachers, and then some resources. I'd like to start with the resources. And by the way, I'm going to go through this kind of idea of, I often think in this kind of idea, we break up the whole process from the time we prepare at home to the time we exit the classroom. And I've asked Sergey to put up these links for you. I've written 3 SOPs, one for the ECC area, one for school, and one for office. Why I'm sharing the office one as well, because the ideas have evolved over time and grown, and they're useful to read all of them. I've also recently done a talk on the whole issue of masks and look at all the evidence, and left both a document as well as a YouTube of that discussion for you to look at. And I recommend you have a look at that talk. It's worthwhile. So for COVID-19, I think we must recognize that we're not looking at just 1 to 3 years. It may be longer. A lot of people are hoping for a vaccine, but many of us are looking at the whole scene. Vaccines are hard to be safe. There may be mutations in the virus, and the vaccine actually may potentiate you to get a more severe COVID infection. So I wouldn't hurry up the vaccine too strongly. So we have to it may last for much longer. And of course, we know that some people may die or get severely ill. So the key is safety bubbles. And I think that's the way to think about everything. Think in terms of safety bubbles and keep our numbers in the community low. We must recognize in Malaysia, we have low-grade spread. We expect more waves to come, but really nobody can predict what's going to come. And if anybody says they know what's going to happen, I think it's not true. So this uncertainty is what creates our anxiety. And for me, keeping a routine is what is going to help. And what we've shared earlier from Yana and Suen is about, for us as adults to keep our calm so that children also will be calm. If you look at the red lines here, both from Hong Kong and from Tokyo, you can see that what's happening in both these countries, the unlinked cases are appearing. So similarly in Malaysia, we have unlinked cases appearing in larger number. These are people who we don't know where their infection came from, and this suggests to us community spread. So the areas that we're worried about, these are the key features that we're worried about. If you're in an air-conditioned environment, you're crowded, or you talk a lot, or you're singing, or longer duration, these are what are called super spreading situations. And in this situation, 1 meter is not enough. I've tried to stratify super spreading situations like this, but I like to say just for schools alone, I'm not going to read the rest. Schools are medium to high risk, provided you're a non-air-conditioned school. If you're an air-conditioned school, then I'd probably move you up to high risk. And so in a school or kindergarten with good SOP, with no air conditioning, you're medium to high risk in this whole scene. So we have to behave like this. We think that everybody around us is COVID-19 positive. We ourselves are COVID-19 positive and can infect others. must recognize that even from MOH data, 70% of people who are infected are asymptomatic, and that could be us. Okay. So what about children? People have asked lots of questions. I look very hard at the data, I keep reading the data. Are children less likely to get infected? That's very uncertain. Can children get less severe infections? Yes, that's true. But the key problem with children is transmission to adults is the issue. The study just came out, just published recently, showing that this was in a overnight camp, that children got more likely to be affected than adults, which is unusual. I think prior to this, because we closed schools so early, we didn't have enough data on children. But right now, it appears that children may get infected quite easily, but they are less severe. Another study just came out 2 weeks ago showing that children had 10 times to 100 times more COVID virus in their throat than adults have. So obviously, they can go home and spread this to grandpa and grandma, which is our major concern. Also recognize that Korea, France, and Israel had an upsurge in their community spread when they opened school, and they link this spread to school opening. So children may not be severely infected, but may spread the infection. I'm going to cover some of these areas. And again, we can come back in question time to cover some of the rest. And let's handle some of the key areas. First of all, preparing. I think Suen has talked a little bit about that, but I think training of everybody is important, including any cleaners and security guards. And I always believe one person in the ECCE must become a supervisor. One person in the kindergarten or taska must be the ones who go and nag everybody else about their routine SOP. And you need to prepare the classroom, as Suen has shown. Secondly, some children may not travel with their parents' car, and buses are higher risk. I would say, if possible, carpool, but with the same people. But if they're traveling by bus, therefore, try not to use aircon, and definitely mask at that time. Arrival, I think we want to stagger arrival of parents. We want to do the health checks that Suen talked about. We want to make sure unwell children don't come, and that's a lot of parental responsibility. And of course, we don't want parents to mix while they come outside. We want them to just come, drop the child, and go off. So we want to do temperature screening and hand disinfection. Now, I want to say a word about temperature screening. It is safe, the screening. There are a lot of rumors which are not true, but it's not very useful. WHO says it's not very effective on its own. Much of the studies have shown maybe you pick up 30-40% of people. You must remember the majority are asymptomatic. If you don't calibrate your scanner, then it's not good. So we'll still do it, but don't expect too much from it. Hand washing and hand disinfection is very useful. We do it when you come in. We do it before a meal, after using a toilet. For teachers, I would say avoid any long sleeves, have no rings on your fingers, have nothing on your hands, otherwise you can't clean properly. Notice that tap heads in this particular kindergarten are not good. They're poor. They should not be touched after cleaning. I've seen videos where children touch the tap head after cleaning. So we would recommend that long term, if you can, invest in this kind of tap heads, which are elbow-based sink taps, and invest in a foot-operated soap dispenser. So it's a safer way and for long term. There's also a lot of concern about alcohol-based sanitizers, but they are safe. A lot of studies have gone to them. And the main risk to children is someone drinks it rather than on his hands. But I won't support spraying the child's body. Just the hands is sufficient. Now, the key part that we're looking at is looking at the classroom session. And if you look at WHO's recommendations are wear masks, including in schools, and use a non-medical mask, which means use a cloth mask. This is WHO's latest guidelines in June this year. Ministry of Health so far has said encourage masks in schools, which means kindergartens as well. The NSC has said we don't want to burden poorer families, which is why we have not imposed this ruling yet, but implies that they will impose this ruling for kindergartens and schools soon. And we've all seen this graphic, which does not include schools, sadly, inside, but needs to include school if you take into account WHO's guidance. Okay, so do cloth masks work? And I again refer you back to the video that I produced, which is extensively discussing the evidence. But the first diagram up here shows what a cough looks like, or sneeze might look like. It goes very far. I would say that 1 meter distance is nothing at all in a closed environment. But the moment you wear any cloth mask, this is what happens to you. And this applies also to any mask that you buy off the counter, okay? So masks work, all masks work, and that's very clear from the data. The best work is from Conda and the Royal Society. And if you look at this tables here, a single layer cloth mask is not very good in filtration. This one is looking at you spreading to others. This is looking at you getting the bug from people, the particles coming in. So a single layer is not so good. 2 layers are much better, filter about 60-70%. But once you use 3 layers, and if you use one cotton layer, maybe a chiffon, a silk layer, or a flat panel layer, you get almost 90% filtration of particles. Notice that the N95 mask and the surgical mask are about the same, or maybe not as good. So there's a lot of fallacy about cloth masks out there that people don't think. Of course, I take into account the fact that cloth masks are not equal. Some of them may be only 1 layer, some are 2 layers. But even 2-layer mask is quite good. So I want to break this wrong thinking. Cloth masks work. Just got to try and push for all of us to come this kind of standard high quality mask. And in case you don't believe me, look at some of the best leaders in the world. They're intelligent leaders, they have good health services, and they're good advisors, and they all wear cloth masks, suggesting to us that this evidence they know very well. Okay? So I would recommend that if you want to use a mask, there are only 2 kinds of masks you should use: a 3-ply surgical mask or cloth mask. Don't use the N95 mask, and we should use preferably 2 or 3 layers, and I would like to say 3 layers is good. I use this particular mask. I've lived 6 decades. I've got health problems. This is a gill mask, which is it has a disposable filter in here, which I use a 3-ply filter inside, and this protects me a lot better. Okay. Based on WHO, there are some people who should not use cloth masks, and those are health professionals, old people like me, people with health problems, and people who have COVID, and these people should use 3-ply surgical masks. Now, it's not easy for masks for children. Not every child can use. Under 2, we don't recommend, because children can't tell you they're suffocating or they're choking. Between 2 to 4, I find many children like this will be fiddling or pull the mask down. This is more dangerous. If you keep touching or fiddling with the mask, better not to wear one, better to wear a shield. But by 5, I think most children can. But again, there may be some with disabilities who don't. Again, I think it's always useful to have a spare mask. You know, your mask may get wet. And I don't think a mask can last for a whole day for teachers. It probably could last for a couple of hours, 4 or 5 hours at the most. Okay? The NSC and KKM has come out with guidance saying that people who are disability, who can't wear masks, should not be wearing masks, and they also talk about under 2 there. What about face shields? These are not as effective as masks. I looked at all the available evidence on this, but face shields have a role. Face shields prevent the direct ejection of your breathing and a cough or a sneeze. You can eat with face shields as well. I would recommend the cap type face shields for younger children because it's easier to use. I don't like this type of cap shield for children. They're easy to clean. They prevent you from touching your face so much, and they're useful for a child who can't wear a mask. I again would be careful in under 2. If you don't have supervision for a child under 2, I wouldn't use, and definitely I wouldn't use in small babies. So these are the possibilities now, 6 possibilities for a child coming to school. They may not be able to wear anything, and so they come like this. They may wear, like in B here, a 3-ply mask. They may wear a cloth mask C. D, they may wear a 3-ply mask and a shield. E, they may wear a cloth mask and a shield. And finally, they may wear a shield alone. I would recommend that you do B or C as ideal, but if a parent is worried, maybe do D or E, and that's the way to go. But for someone who cannot wear a mask, do F. For teachers, these are the possibilities as well. The problem with teaching and also with the whole idea of wearing a face mask and a shield is that your volume gets less. When I do this and I go out to buy tapao food, I actually have to speak louder because people can't hear me so well. And for some children who are younger, they need to see the teacher's lips to learn. And so a teacher could just wear a 3-ply mask, or she could wear a safety glass. I think this is not so good. I think the better thing is a face shield with a 3-ply mask, or a face shield with a cloth mask. Or if you think you're dealing with very young children and they need to see your lips, then a face shield. But the minimum I think a teacher should do is D, but probably consider C or A. Okay, for a face shield, make sure the face shield comes round and goes down. Don't have a short face shield, not effective. Okay, recognize that our 3-ply masks are causing massive pollution. They last for many years and is expected to destroy our environment, which is why everyone is pushing for cloth masks. For your environment, I think live in safety bubbles. We know this kind of thing is unrealistic. Don't let classes mix, as has been discussed earlier. Mind you, we have shorter sessions. I don't think these acrylic barriers are very useful. I've looked at airflow studies in rooms. I think they're not so useful. If you're wearing a mask or face shield, I think they're less useful. They also require more work in cleaning. They're better in probably taxis or service stations. Have a cleaning routine. I think the most important place to clean is the surface table of the child. and the chair, and of course all the touch surfaces. Is an air spray disinfectant useful? I do not think so. I think what's more valuable is to ventilate the room. Otherwise, use a ceiling fan is better. Do not use a stand or directional fan. It blows particles in one direction. I would use a stand fan to ventilate the room after a session. Open the window, put a stand fan there to ventilate out and suck air from your room out into the open. And that, from a Japanese study on particle, takes about 45 minutes for that to happen. Reduce intra-group activities and avoid inter-group activities, meaning keeping to your bubble. And I think we need to worry about break times, nap times, loo breaks, and all this. Again, they should be staggered between the groups. No food sharing, definitely. Your own utensils, as Sue has showed. No mattress sharing. Toilet safety is an important consideration. No showers at the center anymore, if that's possible. Okay. I've got a toilet policy here, which I'm not going to go through, except to say, try and wait before someone uses another toilet. Better to have an exhaust fan in the toilet if you can. Dismantle all blowers for the floor and the air dryers. They are no good. Don't use hand dryers, and try and sanitize the doorknobs if you can. Gloves, as Suen has mentioned, avoid except for cleaning. I think they really give you a false sense of security unless you clean them between every car handling. Otherwise, some people may just use them between cars and actually become a source of spread. The issues like school bag and water bags, water bottles, and other things like what to do with someone becomes stiff. Let's take that during question time if we can. You need to think about minimizing the virus transmission to your family. That's extremely important. And I tell children and parents, when you go home, the first thing you should do is, take off your baju, have a shower, then only go and talk to someone. Okay. People are experimenting with open air classes, and I think that's something to consider. Difficult without good trees around and so on. Some people are bringing in poor places, bringing the school to the child. Of course, we do it electronically, but not everybody has that capacity. And I worry about rural communities and poor people in our country. Okay, I know Katina has talked about this, but I'd like to just mention that as we've talked about, our peace and confidence will transmit to the child. And for me personally, something that I've developed in my own life for many years is, one, I develop a routine as been discussed, and I stick to my routine. I wake up very early in the morning. I do things on a routine every day. I have a screen-free time every day. I spend a lot of time doing daily reflection with God. I spend a lot of time reflecting, thinking, listening, not with the brain, but with the heart. And finally, I take a lot of time to enjoy moments, small things in life, and nature better than anything else. Of course, I read a lot, so that keeps me informed to maintain my routine. Here's a sunrise that I watch from my home. I watch lots of sunrises and wildflowers. So I recommend to you that you have some sort of mechanism to allay your anxiety and give you peace and confidence, will then transmit to your children. Finally, again, the resources that I mentioned. Thank you very much. Back to you, Denise.
Thanks, Amar. That was very, very informative. You were very precise on each and everything that you talked about, which is great, because I'm pretty sure there are many of us out there with lots of question marks still, and you've answered so many questions, which I'm certain it is very helpful, especially to practitioners like Sue. And I think right now Sue would feel more confident in practicing her routines, her protocols, her practices in her schools with her team. Right? Thank you so much again, Amar. Now, it's time for us to bring in all three of our speakers, as well as Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Oh, now we're finally all together. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to try to take some questions from the floor. So we've noticed some of you have posed some questions for us. Let's take a look and see. Oh, okay. So we have Samsha here asking Dr. Amar, is it safe to point the temperature machine on the forehead of the child?
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. We've all seen this video that's been circulating, somebody saying to destroy your pineal gland. I think the Ministry of Health has come out with a clear statement saying that it's fake news. I think in this day and age, we've got the internet and Google at our disposal. If you just search, pineal gland, this kind of temperature monitoring scanners, and then look at fake news or ask for snoops, you will find a couple of articles written by people showing that this is wrong. So this is fake news. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Safe to do.
Thanks for clarifying that, Amar. Let's take a look at another question if we do have. Okay. So Scott has asked, could I please know what app are you using to inform parents, Suen? Oh, Suen, this question is for you.
Yep, I've actually listed it in the chat. We actually use Utlins. It's basically a parents communication platform that helps us to record temperatures as well as record symptoms. And the minute we will record that, parents will get a notification. So some of our children that stay with us full day, we would do 3 times of temperature check. And the minute we do that, the parent will also get a notification. So it's pretty helpful. It's called Utlins, and I've just dropped it in the chat box for everybody to just refer to that.
I see. Thanks, Suen.
So to the audience out there, if you have any question for our 3 speakers, please feel free to type in the comment below. But thank you so much for... Okay, I think we have a question here from Scott Wong. Will we be able to view the session after this live stream ends? Yes, Scott. Yes, we will be recording this session, and it will be available at our SEGI College Subang Jaya website. You just go to YouTube and you Google for us. You can see the recording there.
Michelle, I'd like to ask a question that Suen posed to me that's very difficult to answer. She asked me in our discussion this last week, should children who have gone on holiday with their parents, when they come back, should they be allowed to attend the kindy or should they be on 14-day quarantine? That's a very difficult question to answer.
Thank you for answering that, because that's one problem that we are facing.
Let me answer the question that I can answer. If the children go overseas and then come back, yes, I would say they should not attend your center for 14 days because it's quite likely in the travel and going overseas that there's an infection risk. Now, let's say they are in Selangor and they went to Kedah for Hari Raya Haji, you know, and you know that there's an outbreak right now. Should they be allowed to come back? Oh, very difficult question. You know, we know that there's a super spreading event going on there. So we may have to talk to the parents and say, hey, maybe for this situation, yes. But they just went to, you know, the beach in PD and then come back. I think that's probably all right. So again, we have to keep abreast of where the risks are and decide on that basis for within the country. Not a good answer, but that's the best I can give you right now.
Thank you, Dr. Amar.
So that means we always, Amar, would you say we always have to be very vigilant and very up to date on the figure daily?
Yes, I think, and especially watch what I said, unlinked cases. Unlinked cases are people who just walk in and get tested because they're coming for surgery or some other reason, and we don't know where they got infection with, and they are the ones who tell us about the widespread COVID in our country, not the clusters. The clusters just tell you which place to avoid.
And especially now, we have asymptomatic cases, right?
Most of them, yes, the majority.
Okay.
I think the predicament in our setting would be that sometimes parents do not inform us when they go chuti Malaysia.
Yes, correct. I call it chuti. They call it chuti COVID-19 now, rather than chuti Malaysia. I went to the jungle yesterday to take a complete screen-free day, and I went to the Cameron Highlands jungle. And I was amazed with the number of people who were there. The 5 km traffic jam. Of course, I came very early. I disappeared into the jungle. Only when I came out, I didn't meet anybody. Then I saw this 5 km traffic jam. So I think we need to be cutting down our holidays and maybe spend more local, you know, neighborhood park and stuff like that. Go for a walk with your kids.
I feel quite bad because I'm on holiday.
I'm curious, Amar, do you wear masks when you go to the jungle? No, right?
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
But I don't meet anybody except birds and animals here.
Okay, I think we do have some
I
questions.
think we've got some questions. Yeah, I think we've got some questions coming in. Now, we have this question here says that how do we help children feel safe again in a world that seems so scary right now? Yana, would you like to take this question?
Oh, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because I think at the end of the day, the worst part, I think, for adults, like even for my clients to come and see me, is that we really can't give them answers because we ourselves don't have the answers, right? And so that type of reassurance we can't give them short of just flat out lying, which is probably not what we should be doing either. So I go back to what I said earlier. Children take your cue, right? So if we maintain our calm, if we kind of make it sort of something that we try to take the fear factor out of, don't encourage kind of like, I was reading the comments earlier, some adults say, if you don't wear a mask, you're going to die. Avoid using language such as that, because that will just increase the fear factor with children. So if a child comes to you and says, I'm scared over so-and-so, then try to adopt a very calm demeanor and say things like, yeah, I'm a little scared too, but you know what I do when I'm scared, and you kind of make it something that's a lot less intimidating for them. With older children, don't be afraid to be honest and tell them, the reason why I'm not too keen on you going out today, or why I'm not too keen on letting you guys play in groups, is because, there's been an outbreak in this area and we have to be very careful. You can be very open with the older children, but with younger children, talking about statistics and all the scary factor is just going to make them scared. It's not going to be something they can process. So I would say, be as calm as possible, even though you're probably on the inside quite unsettled, but just kind of say, yeah, I'm a little scared, but let's see what we can do about that. Try to keep it quite light, and then they will kind of read off your cues that way.
Right. Thanks, Yana. Great tips.
Okay, we have another question from Justin. And when we are faced with choice between prioritizing safety practices or mental well-being of children, which should we deem to be more important? That's challenging. Which is more important?
I
So
mean,
who wants to take this question?
I have to say that even as the mental health practitioner here, I would probably say my main goal is to prioritize physical health and safety. There's been a lot of discussion about how mental health will be the final wave of the pandemic. So actually during this time, everyone in the mental health department actually worked overtime because people were struggling. But that, be that as it may, it is very, very important, I feel, even to prioritize safety precautions and keeping people physically safe, and then, dealing with the mental health concurrently. But I would prioritize the SOPs, I think.
Can I add that I think that the key at this time is parents. We can't expect the teachers to take all this burden on them. They've got their own responsibilities and their own families. So it's the parents who can make children feel safe and enable them to handle the difficulties of all the SOPs. So I would think that COVID-19 has clarified our priorities. Our priorities are not chasing wealth or fame, but chasing relationships. And if we create space and time at home for cuddles and love and time to just listen to each other, it take a lot of the pain out of this pandemic out.
Yeah.
So don't push everything to teachers. I think parents must play their role as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Yana and Amar. Wonderful response. It was a very good question from Justin as well. Tough one, but it was a good one. Now we have people asking us, how if some of the children don't like to wear mask or face shield? What do we do? Amar, would you like to take this question?
I would think it depends on age and the child's situation. I think if the child's got autism or some other disability that makes them adverse to wearing, then we'll have to deal. Actually, I'm very heavily involved with the disability scene for years, and I know we're discussing this, and some children just refuse to wear, and we'll have to live with that. But let's say you got an older child who just doesn't want to wear. He or she can wear but doesn't want to wear. I think then we'll have to be a little bit more firm with them and say, there's something everybody is wearing. But you got a younger child, 3, 4, who feels very choked or suffocated with it. I think we'll have to accept that they can't wear. I'd like Suen to add a comment about this. How would other parents who shouldn't wear masks then feel about this, Suen?
Actually, on a general note, I find that up to 99% of our children don't have a problem wearing face shield or face mask, as long as teachers are encouraging, they themselves set examples. So it's like teaching children to line up in school. When they first come, they don't know how to line up. and you would just repeat the routine, and you reestablish that rule daily, and you do it on an encouraging note. So that's the same thing that we would do with mask and face mask. Of course, for the first few days, some children may need multiple reminders, and some may need even a reward to that. And you would have to reward them for wearing a mask until it stabilizes. Then you slowly fade off that reward, and it's something that is doable. So I would say 99% of my children won't have a problem at all with mask.
And remember what Diana said earlier about making it exciting. I don't think we should carry on with this very insipid looking masks and face shields that we have right now. We really need, I look overseas. I didn't put pictures, but I've seen very exciting mask and face shield design in Caucasian countries that children enjoy wearing. It gives them a Power Ranger kind of feel.
If I could kind of piggyback on what you said as well, like use the token system. I mean, use a star chart to actually include face masks for the kids who are struggling with it, not because they can't, but because it's more behavioral and they kind of just don't want to. Use token systems and star charts to actually encourage them to do that. And then also, use visual guides so that when kids come to school, it's like, let's see how many points you accumulated. Sorry, I have this childlike voice that comes out when I talk to kids. And so you can have the face mask, you can have the hand washing icons on the wall, and then you get to cross off how many they accumulated when they arrive at school. So it becomes a game. So if we're dealing with a behavioral issue rather than it being due to an autism spectrum disorder or some other condition, then things like that will make it more exciting for them.
Yeah, that's definitely doable. Yeah.
Yeah, and, but from my experience, it's really 99%. As long as the teacher would just remind them, it's not a problem.
Okay, great. So because of the constraint of time, we let's take two last questions now. Let's look at this one.
Can I answer this question?
Yeah. Oh.
Yes, it's yours, Suen.
Yeah.
Yep. So at our center, what we do is upon enrollment, upon your return back to a physical setting, you would have to fill up a very long declaration form. Includes you, the child, the parents, and everybody that's living in the household. It's a very long form. And then on a daily basis, if there's any change, then we actually have it on our app that you would have to enter on a daily basis, inclusive of the child's temperature. So that's what we do. So one long form upon returning, and a daily short form just to tell us if you have got any changes to the previous declaration.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks.
Now we'll take our final question. Now, Vinjin asked us, current SOPs do not allow outdoor activities in kindergartens. So
what is your take on this, Amar?
Yeah.
If I could, I would move the whole school outdoors without COVID-19. I'm very much in children exploring nature and so on. I like the idea if you have some piece of land, if you got your own private play area, definitely I would say go outdoors. Because you're working in bubbles, so you'll have to clean the slide and things in between children. And that's a bit tricky and takes some effort. But I think you can wipe it down, and I would go ahead with that. So yes, outdoors as much as possible. Gives children a chance to run around. Dennis and Michelle, could we take two more questions? I think there's one that Suen maybe should answer, or Katyana, about should we hug children or not when they're crying. Melanie Bodhipala, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question here is, lots of practitioners ask whether they should hug the children when they're crying, at the risk of getting sick. What do you think?
It's a very tricky question, isn't it? Very tricky.
If I could chip in, maybe get some plastic aprons available. So you're already masked and you got a face shield. If you wear a plastic apron on top of your baju and then you give the child a hug, you could limit the amount of surface contamination that happens to you, and that's one way to go about it.
But it wouldn't work if the child is crying and you say, "Wait, I'll go get my apron and I'll come back to hug you."
Agreed. No easy answer.
So
definitely a tricky one because again, yes, we have a pandemic on our hands and we have to worry about it, but at the same time we don't want to communicate the message to the little ones that when I am crying, nobody's going to comfort me. When I'm feeling unwell, no one's going to give me a cuddle. Those are things that are so important still. So yeah, I agree with Suen saying like wait, and then running to go and get an apron might not be doable, but if you have the ability, if you have the gear on, if you have to give them a cuddle, that's where
I'm going to use it. I'm going to approach it from a different way. So instead of giving them a hug, change your way of telling them that you are there. So instead of a hug, just get near to the child and say, "Hey, I'm here. Calm down. I'm looking at you. I'm smiling at you. You'll be all right." And I think if you just look at them with that pair of caring eyes, even behind a mask, there is a certain sense of calmness that you are passing on to that child. So yes, we cannot hug you, but we could express our care and concern for you in a different way, and that is going to be the new normal for now.
And there's one more question from Blurry, which I just like to answer if I could, Michelle and Dennis. And that's about wearing masks and US and and especially the hazard of wearing masks. No, the next one after that, Blurry asked after the wearing a mask. Yes, correct. If this was true, if masks actually cause health problems, then I think all our surgeons would be in trouble in the whole world. Surgeons wear masks for many hours a day. The nurses in operating theaters wear it for many. I know some plastic surgeons who wear masks for 18 hours while you're operating, and they do it again and again and again. So after 30 years, I think we should hear about surgeons dying. We don't. And we have lots of evidence now of people who wear 3, 4, 5 masks and go for a jog, just to show you that nothing happens to them. So people are trying to tell us that mask is just something up here, and the American public is a mess with this. That's why I didn't put up Trump's picture compared to the other leaders. I put up the sensible leaders, which Obama was there. So let's not listen to that hype. Let's listen to the evidence.
Yeah, I trust the doctor. Actually, previously I see another question which deals with nano spray. Would you have any information about that, Amar? Nano spray?
Well, there was one other question about UV light from Scott as well. Maybe impose this too. Now, how do we clean our premises is the question here. The way that is shown is to wipe down surfaces with a hypochlorite solution or with alcohol. Hypochlorite is better, as Suen has pointed out, than the alcohol. And it's easier and cheaper to do. Do sprays in the air do anything for you? I think no. Even Ministry of Health is very clear. DG has said no, they don't do anything. All this mist don't work. We think that ventilating the room, from the Japanese work, the ventilating the room is the most efficient thing. But UV light works. The problem with UV light is to be very safe with it. It can burn skin, it can damage eyes. Hospitals in many industrialized countries have put in UV lights long ago as a means to sterilize the whole room after the patient is removed. So it could be there. I haven't done enough reading to tell you which UV lights, and that has to be done. The research, as Suen said, has to be done.
So that was the question about UV light as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have time? I think there are a lot of among our audience, a lot of questions.
Thank you everyone for pouring your questions in, your comments in. We're so appreciative of it. We're so appreciative of the turnout today as well. It's a good turnout. Lots of people here on a Friday night with us. Absolutely blessed. All right. But I guess because of the time constraint, we might have to wrap things up now. To think of our speakers, would you all have anything else to say as a before
for our viewers?
Maybe let's start with Suen.
I would just say everybody plays a part in this, and I hope that teachers and center managers, even as we press on, that parents would just continue to cooperate with us. We're looking forward to a better tomorrow. It's been a difficult time, but just persevering, and we're going to just see a better tomorrow. That's for me.
Thanks, Suen. Now, what about Yana?
I think that my favorite metaphor during this whole pandemic is that there's a reason why when you're on the plane, they tell you to put on a mask before you do it on the person that you're taking care of. Because if you're incapacitated, if you're not holding up well, then that is absolutely a recipe for the people in your care, or the children in your care to struggle as well. So, take care of not just your physical health, but also be very aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling. As Dr. Arma said, disconnect as much as you can, practice mindfulness, and all the resources are available at your fingertips. I mean, Malaysia is actually doing very well in terms of providing support for mental health services now. So just take care of you, so that we can make sure your kids are in a better place to be taken care of as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Yana. Amar?
Well, I would say, while we have to plan and prepare for what's coming in the future, I would say live for the moment. It's an inadvertent, I hate COVID-19, but inadvertently it's made many people try to live in the moment. And so I would say, be attentive, be present to the person around you, be present to all that you're seeing, wildlife, wildflowers, nature, sunrises, so on, but especially people who are around your family as well. And of course, the teachers, the students, be present to them, extend your love. One of the things I hope to be, I don't plan to have a gravestone, I plan to be cremated, but if I had a gravestone, I would say, something like, never lose an opportunity to tell somebody that you love them. And I think don't lose an opportunity right now. Make it every moment. Call up people you haven't spoken to, tell them that you love them, care for people right now, and share your resources with each other. And I think as a nation, as a people, we will get through this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think these are all very powerful sharing. And on behalf of our audience and the listener out there, we would like to thank all three of our distinguished speaker, Amar, Sue-Ann, as well as Yana. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're incredibly blessed with how much we can learn from all three of you today. So thank you so much, everyone. To our audiences, thank you so much for tuning in with us. This wouldn't be possible without you guys as well. So we've come to the end of today's session. Now, on behalf of
let's look at this one. If you do not want to miss any of our upcoming session, on and off we will have webinars. So you can also subscribe with us by joining our Telegram group. This is the QR code. Please scan and join the link to be part of our group, so that you can be well informed of our upcoming webinar. So with that, we have come to the end of our webinar. So on behalf of the SEGI group of colleges, we thank all of you for joining us tonight. So stay connected, and we shall see you next time.
Stay safe, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again in our next session.
Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.